The signal. The quantum computer's alert pierced the quiet of the Lunar Research Station's linguistics lab, causing Dr. Sarah Chen to jolt upright in her chair. 3 years of monitoring deep space communications had yielded nothing but cosmic background noise and the occasional pulsar signal. But this was different. "Computer, analyze signal pattern," she commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The three-dimensional waveform materialized before her, its structure unlike anything she'd seen in her decade of sinolinguistics research. The signal pulsed with a deliberate rhythm, mathematical sequences interwoven with what appeared to be geometric coordinates, simple enough to be understood, yet complex enough to be unmistakably artificial. This was no random cosmic phenomenon. Sarah's heart raced as she initiated the station's priority protocol. Within minutes, the lab's doors whispered open, admitting Director Hammond, his silver hair disheveled, as if he'd run the entire way from his quarters. "Tell me I didn't wake up at 300 hours for another false positive, Dr. Chen," he said, his voice gravelly with sleep. Sarah gestured to the floating display. "Look at the pattern recognition analysis, sir. It's not just structured, it's responding to our automated greeting protocols. Whatever's sending this signal, it's intelligent. And it's coming closer." The director's eyes widened as he absorbed the data. The signal source was approaching the solar system at a measurable velocity, decelerating in a way that defied known physics. How long until they reach Earth's orbit? At current velocity? Sarah checked her calculations twice. 72 hours. Hammond's face paled. 3 days to prepare for humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. He reached for the secure quantum comlink. "Get me the Secretary General. And Sarah, not a word of this to anyone until we have a containment strategy." But containment proved impossible. Within hours, amateur astronomers across the globe began reporting a strange object decelerating through the Kuiper Belt. Social media exploded with theories, from doomsday predictions to celebrations of humanity's imminent ascension to the stars. In Washington, Beijing, Moscow, and New Delhi, military commands went to high alert. Nuclear arsenals were primed, though everyone knew such weapons would be meaningless against visitors who could traverse interstellar space. Sarah worked without rest, coordinating with linguistics teams worldwide to decode the increasingly complex messages. The signal had evolved from mathematical sequences to what appeared to be ideographic symbols, a visual language designed for first contact. "They're being pursued," she announced during the emergency UN Security Council meeting, 48 hours after the initial detection. The holographic display showed the latest transmission, a series of images depicting ships in flight, weapons fire, and what appeared to be a plea for sanctuary. "So our first contact with alien life is with refugees." The Chinese ambassador's voice carried a mix of disbelief and concern. "And their pursuers?" 6 larger vessels, detected crossing the heliopause," Sarah replied. "They're moving faster than the first ship. They'll arrive within hours of each other." The room erupted in heated debate. Some argued for immediate military response, others for diplomatic engagement. A few suggested denying both groups entry to the solar system, though no one could propose how to enforce such a ban. It was the Nigerian representative who finally cut through the chaos. "We're missing the point," she said, her voice commanding attention. "This isn't just about these aliens. This is humanity's audition for the galactic stage. How we handle this crisis will define our species in the eyes of the cosmos." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The representative was right. Whatever they decided here would echo through human history, assuming they survived the next few days. The Secretary General rose, his face grave. "We need a team. Not just diplomats and soldiers, but people who can think beyond our traditional boundaries. Dr. Chen, you'll head the linguistic and cultural division. We'll need to understand not just their words, but their intentions." As the meeting adjourned, Sarah found herself pulled aside by a tall, dark-skinned man wearing the uniform of the newly formed United Earth Defense Force. "Dr. Chen, Captain Marcus Torres, First Contact Response Unit. We need your help with something we found in the signal's metadata. He showed her a series of symbols they'd isolated from the transmission's background noise. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the pattern. It wasn't just a message, it was a warning. "The pursuing ships," she whispered. "They're not just chasing refugees. They're hunting something. Something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy." She looked up at Torres, her face pale. "And whatever it is, it's on that first ship." Torres nodded grimly. "Then we better figure out what it is before they all arrive, because in roughly 36 hours, Earth's airspace is going to become a battlefield one way or another." Sarah turned back to the symbols, her mind racing. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, imagining everything from peaceful exchange to invasion. But nobody had prepared for this, being thrust into the middle of an alien conflict, forced to make decisions that could affect not just Earth, but potentially the entire galaxy. As she worked through the night, studying the increasingly urgent transmissions, one thing became clear. The approaching ship wasn't just seeking refuge, it was choosing Earth specifically. Out of countless star systems, they'd come here. The question was, why? The answer, when it came, was hidden in a simple mathematical sequence buried within the original signal. Sarah stared at it for long minutes before the implications hit her. It wasn't just a message, it was a key, and humanity's response would determine whether it unlocked salvation or destruction. "Captain Torres," she called, her voice shaking slightly. "I think I know why they chose Earth. And if I'm right, we have less than a day to prepare for something far bigger than first contact." The captain looked up from his tactical display, his expression questioning. "They're not running from something," Sarah explained, pulling up the decoded sequence. "They're running toward something. Something that's been here all along, waiting for a civilization advanced enough to understand it, but primitive enough to think in ways the others can't." "What are you saying, Doctor?" Sarah's fingers traced the pattern in the air. "I'm saying that humanity's greatest weakness might just be our greatest strength. We're about to find out if being the new kids on the block makes us the most dangerous players in the game." As if in response, the quantum computer chimed again. A new signal, stronger than before. The first ship had crossed Jupiter's orbit. First contact was no longer a matter of if, but when. And humanity's response in the next few hours would ripple across the galaxy for millennia to come. The real question was, were they ready? The arrival. The alien ship emerged from Jupiter's shadow like a pearl catching starlight. Its organic curves defied traditional spacecraft design, resembling a massive nautilus shell crafted from some impossibly smooth, iridescent material. The vessel was wounded, plasma scarring marked its port side, and a faint trail of crystalline debris traced its path through space. At Lunar Command, Captain Torres watched the high-resolution feed beside Dr. Chen, their faces illuminated by the ghostly glow of multiple holographic displays. "Beautiful," he breathed, "and completely exposed. One shot from those pursuit vessels would tear it apart." "Then we better make sure that doesn't happen," Sarah replied, her fingers moving through the translation matrices they'd constructed. The alien vessel's communications were becoming clearer with each passing hour, though the underlying meaning remained frustratingly opaque. The quantum computer chimed, displaying a new transmission. This one was different. A direct, focused beam rather than the earlier omnidirectional signals. Sarah's eyes widened as she processed the message. "They're requesting permission to enter Earth orbit," she announced to the assembled crisis team. "And they're offering to power down all systems except life support as a show of good faith." Director Hammond frowned. "That would leave them completely defenseless when their pursuers arrive. Either they trust us implicitly, or they're that desperate," Torres finished. The decision came from the newly formed Earth Defense Council within minutes, permission granted. As the alien vessel began its approach, humanity held its collective breath. Every telescope, satellite, and sensor array on and around Earth tracked its movement. The ship's deceleration was precisely calculated, bleeding off velocity in a way that spoke of advanced civilization, while carefully avoiding any appearance of aggressive maneuvering. It was a dance of trust, each movement choreographed to demonstrate peaceful intentions. As it settled into high Earth orbit, the vessel's outer hull shifted, sections realigning to reveal what appeared to be an airlock mechanism. A transmission followed immediately. They were requesting a face-to-face meeting. "They're either very brave or very foolish," Hammond muttered, "putting themselves directly in our hands when their pursuers are hours away." Sarah studied the latest translations. "No," she said slowly, "they're being clever. By requesting direct contact, they're forcing us to invest in their survival. It's harder to abandon someone once you've looked them in the eyes." The Council's response was swift. A small delegation would be allowed to dock with the International Space Station, which had been evacuated of all but essential personnel. Captain Torres would lead the security detail, with Dr. Chen heading the diplomatic team. As their shuttle approached the ISS, Sarah's mind raced through possible first contact scenarios. Despite years of theoretical preparation, nothing could truly prepare humanity for this moment. The airlock cycled. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as the inner door began to open. The first alien stepped through, and every rehearsed greeting died in her throat. The being before her stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in what appeared to be living metal, flowing like liquid mercury with each movement. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but with too many joints, too many angles that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Where a head should be, there was a complex arrangement of sensory organs that pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light. "I am Nexus," the being said, its words translated through some unseen mechanism into perfect, unaccented English. "And we have chosen humanity because you are different." Torres's hand remained near his weapon, though they all knew it would be useless if the aliens proved hostile. "Different how?" "Your minds," Nexus replied, gesturing with a limb that seemed to flow rather than move. "You think in patterns that our pursuers cannot predict. You see possibilities that we have forgotten how to imagine." Sarah stepped forward. "The signal key I found. It was a test, wasn't it? You wanted to see how we'd approach the problem." "Yes." The alien surface rippled in what might have been appreciation. "Your species solved in hours what others would analyze for years. You saw not just the pattern, but the possibilities behind it. What exactly are you carrying that's worth crossing galaxies for?" Torres asked, his professional demeanor masking the awe in his voice. Nexus's form shifted, revealing a small crystalline object suspended in its liquid metal body. The key to evolution itself. The ability to direct conscious development of any species. Our pursuers would use it to enforce stagnation, to preserve their position at the top of the galactic hierarchy. We believe it belongs to species like yours, young, dynamic, unpredictable. Warning klaxons blared through the station. Hammond's voice crackled over the comm. "Multiple vessels just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're on an attack vector." Sarah watched as the pursuing ships appeared on the main display. Massive, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each was easily 20 times the size of the refugee ship. "The Kraxan enforcers," Nexus said, its voice carrying what might have been fear. "They will demand our surrender and your submission. They will offer you technology, knowledge, power, anything to secure their dominance." Torres straightened. "And if we refuse, then they will demonstrate why they have ruled this sector of space for 10,000 years." Sarah looked at the crystalline object still visible within Nexus's form, then at the approaching warships. Humanity had less than an hour to decide. Submit to alien dominance or face annihilation. "Unless, Captain," she said, her mind racing ahead to possibilities that might seem obvious to humans, but unthinkable to older, more structured civilizations. "Remember what you said about our greatest weakness being our greatest strength." Torres nodded slowly, a gleam of understanding in his eyes. "We're unpredictable because we're young. We haven't learned what's impossible yet. Exactly. Sarah turned to Nexus. You chose Earth because we think differently. Now it's time to show you just how differently we can think. As if on cue, the Kraxan vessels began broadcasting their demands. Their message was simple: surrender the fugitives and submit to Kraxan authority, or be destroyed. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Let's show them why choosing Earth was either the smartest or craziest decision in galactic history. The next few hours would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of conscious evolution across the galaxy. And humanity was about to introduce these ancient civilizations to something they'd never encountered before. Human ingenuity unleashed. The chase. The Kraxan ultimatum hung in the air of the ISS command module like a physical presence. Sarah studied the alien text scrolling across her display, its translation becoming clearer with each passing minute. The demands were explicit: surrender Nexus and the evolutionary key, or face immediate destruction. But Sarah Chen had other plans. Tell me, she asked Nexus, her eyes never leaving the tactical display showing the massive Kraxan vessels. How much do your pursuers know about human history? The liquid metal alien shifted, its surface rippling with what might have been curiosity. They have accessed your broadcast transmissions, studied your military capabilities. They believe they understand you completely. Captain Torres let out a short laugh. Then they don't understand us at all. Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic interface, pulling up historical files. Humanity has never had the luxury of overwhelming force. We've always had to think our way out of impossible situations. She highlighted specific battles, strategies, and innovations throughout human history. When we can't win with strength, we change the rules of engagement. Nexus's sensory array pulsed with increasing intensity. You have a plan. We have several, Torres replied, sharing a knowing look with Sarah. And every single one of them violates what your people would consider rational strategy. The first phase of their plan began with a message to the Kraxan fleet, not from Earth's military command, but from a small agricultural research station in Antarctica. The transmission was deliberately weak, seemingly an accidental broadcast about recent breakthroughs in rapid bacterial evolution. The effect was immediate. The Kraxan fleet's formation shifted slightly, several smaller vessels breaking away to analyze this potential threat, just as planned. They think like immortals, Sarah explained to Nexus. Every threat must be contained, every variable controlled. They can't help themselves. Torres nodded, which means they'll react exactly as we expect when Phase 2 begins. Across Earth, seemingly unrelated events began to unfold. A university in Mumbai announced a breakthrough in quantum entanglement. A research facility in Brazil reported unusual results in gravity manipulation experiments. A small tech startup in Kenya released a paper on theoretical faster-than-light communication. None of these announcements were classified. None appeared military in nature. All were legitimate research projects that had been waiting for publication. Their simultaneous release was a carefully orchestrated chaos that sent the Kraxan tactical computers into overdrive. Your species is attempting to confuse our pursuit protocols. The Kraxan commander's transmission boomed through the ISS communication system. This is futile. Surrender the fugitive and the key. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They still think this is about military strategy. Show them the next phase. Across the solar system, hundreds of small objects began to move. Debris from old satellites, decommissioned probes, and space junk that had been accumulating for decades suddenly activated, revealing themselves as a network of miniature propulsion systems. Impossible, Nexus whispered, its form fluctuating rapidly. When did you deploy this defense system? We didn't, Torres replied. This is literally garbage. We just added some simple engines and remote controls over the past few hours. Completely worthless as weapons, but they'll have to track every single piece, Sarah finished, because they can't know for sure what's a threat and what isn't. The Kraxan fleet's formation began to break down as they attempted to track hundreds of potentially threatening objects, each behaving erratically. Their massive ships, designed for overwhelming force, were ill-equipped to handle this type of chaos. But this was just the beginning. Emergency broadcast from Luna Base. A technician's voice cut through the tension. The quantum fluctuation is beginning. On the main display, a massive energy signature bloomed from the lunar surface. To the Kraxan sensors, it would appear as if humanity had activated some kind of superweapon. In reality, it was an elaborate light show powered by redirected solar arrays and carefully modulated magnetic fields. Your species is attempting deception. The Kraxan commander transmitted again, but there was something new in the translation. Uncertainty. No. Sarah replied directly to the alien fleet. We're demonstrating why we're different. You see a primitive species with primitive technology. We see resources you don't even recognize as resources. You see chaos as a weakness. We see it as an opportunity. The space around Earth had become a symphony of confusion. Hundreds of small objects moving in unpredictable patterns, electromagnetic signals bouncing between planets and moons, quantum readings that made no sense to the Kraxan computers, and beneath it all, a stream of seemingly unrelated scientific breakthroughs that hinted at capabilities far beyond what humanity actually possessed. The key, Nexus suddenly announced, its voice carrying an emotion that the translators couldn't quite capture. I understand now why it chose your world. Sarah turned to the liquid metal being. What do you mean, it chose us? The key is semi-sentient, Nexus explained. It seeks species with the potential for dynamic evolution. We thought we were choosing Earth, but the key was drawing us here. It recognized in humanity something that the Kraxan have lost: the ability to embrace chaos as a path to growth. The ISS shuddered as another ultimatum from the Kraxan fleet was broadcast, this one tinged with frustration. They were losing control of the situation, and they knew it. Time for the final phase. Torres announced, his hand hovering over a secure communication panel. Dr. Chen, would you like to do the honors? Sarah took a deep breath, remembering all the sleepless nights that had led to this moment. Send the signal. Let's show them why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. What is your greatest strength? Nexus asked. Sarah's smile was fierce as she activated the transmission. Our ability to work together when everything is falling apart. Across the solar system, humanity's true plan began to unfold, and the Kraxan were about to learn why underestimating Earth was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. The protocol. Sarah Chen watched as humanity's master stroke unfolded across the solar system. It wasn't a weapon or a shield that would save Earth. It was an idea. An idea so fundamentally human that no advanced civilization would have considered it viable. Signal confirmed, Torres announced, his voice steady despite the tension. All stations report ready. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, thousands of quantum-entangled devices activated simultaneously. Each one was primitive by Kraxan standards, barely able to maintain coherence for more than a few seconds. But together, impossible. The Kraxan commander's transmission cut through space, their usually precise language showing signs of stress. Your technology cannot achieve this level of coordination. Alone, no, Sarah replied, allowing her voice to carry pride. But we're not alone. We never were. In the hours since first contact, humanity had done what it did best: adapt and cooperate. Every major research institution, every space agency, every quantum physics lab had worked together, sharing data and resources. They hadn't tried to match the Kraxan's advanced technology. Instead, they'd created something new. The quantum network blazed to life, linking millions of small devices into a single massive computational array. Each individual unit was unreliable, but the network as a whole achieved something unprecedented: a planet-wide quantum consciousness. What are you doing? Nexus asked, its liquid metal form rippling with what might have been awe. We're thinking bigger, Sarah explained. Your people gave us the key to conscious evolution. The Kraxen want to control it. But we're showing them something they never considered: evolution through cooperation. The quantum network expanded, its consciousness growing more complex with each passing second. It wasn't artificial intelligence. It was collective intelligence, millions of human minds working in concert through the quantum field. Torres monitored the tactical display as the Kraxen fleet's formation began to shift. They're detecting the field expansion. They don't understand what they're seeing. Because they're looking for weapons, Sarah said. They're searching for threats they can understand. But we're not fighting them. We're changing the rules of existence itself. The crystalline key within Nexus's form began to pulse in rhythm with the quantum network. Its semi-sentient nature, drawn to humanity's potential, was responding to this unprecedented display of collective consciousness. The key, Nexus whispered, it's synchronizing with your network. This is what it was designed for, not to be used by a single species, but to unite many. Sarah nodded. We figured that out when we studied its structure. It's not a tool for controlling evolution. It's a bridge between different forms of consciousness. The space around Earth shimmered as the quantum field reached critical mass. Every human mind connected to the network could feel it. A sense of expansion, of boundaries dissolving. They weren't just sharing thoughts. They were sharing potential. Final warning, the Kraxen commander transmitted. Deactivate this device immediately or face extinction. Sarah's response was calm, her voice carrying the weight of billions of united minds. You still don't understand. This isn't a device. It's an invitation. The key's crystalline structure began to shift, its facets refracting light in impossible patterns. Through the quantum network, every human could see what was happening. The key wasn't just responding to their consciousness. It was amplifying it, extending it beyond the physical realm. The protocol, Torres said softly, understanding dawning in his eyes. This is what first contact was always meant to be. Not a meeting between separate species, but a step toward something greater. The Kraxen fleet's weapons powered up, their massive ships moving into attack formation. But they hesitated, their sensors overwhelmed by what they were detecting. The quantum field had expanded beyond their ability to measure, carrying with it something they have forgotten how to recognize: the power of unpredictable, unrestricted growth. They're afraid, Nexus observed, its form beginning to synchronize with the field. Not of destruction, but of change. They've spent so long controlling evolution that they've forgotten how to evolve themselves. Sarah stood before the main viewport, watching as the quantum field became visible to the naked eye, a shimmering curtain of possibility extending through space. Then let's remind them. Show them what happens when you embrace chaos instead of fearing it. Through the quantum network, humanity reached out, not with weapons or threats, but with an offer. Join us. Evolve with us. Remember what it means to grow without limits. The key pulsed one final time, and the barrier between species began to dissolve. Human consciousness merged with Nexus's liquid metal awareness, reaching toward the rigid structures of Kraxen thought. It wasn't an attack or a defense. It was an awakening. They're receiving the signal, Torres reported, his voice filled with wonder. Their ships, they're changing. Sarah watched as the massive Kraxen vessels began to transform, their rigid geometries flowing into new patterns. The quantum field had given them something they'd lost millennia ago: the ability to imagine new forms of existence. This is what the key was waiting for, Nexus said, its voice now carrying harmonics of human thought. Not a species advanced enough to control evolution, but one primitive enough to remember that evolution requires letting go of control. The space around Earth had become a canvas of transformation. Humanity's greatest strengths, adaptation, cooperation, and the ability to embrace uncertainty, had unlocked something far more powerful than any weapon. The next step in conscious evolution. As the quantum field stabilized, carrying within it the merged awareness of three vastly different species, Sarah realized that this wasn't just first contact. It was humanity's first step into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. And they had achieved it not through dominance or submission, but through their uniquely human ability to turn chaos into creation. The resolution. 3 months after the quantum field event, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of humanity's first joint species space station, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The station's organic metallic walls pulsed with the combined consciousness of human, Meridian, and Kraxan technology, a living testament to what was possible when different species chose to evolve together. Still having trouble sleeping? Captain Torres asked, joining her at the viewport. Like many humans who had been directly connected to the quantum network during the event, he now carried traces of the experience in his neural patterns. Faint lines of bioluminescence occasionally flickered beneath his skin when he was deep in thought. Just thinking about how close we came to disaster, Sarah replied. If we had tried to match the Kraxans' military might, or if we had simply surrendered. But we didn't, Torres reminded her. We did what humans do best. We found a third option, then a fourth, and a fifth. The station hummed with activity as representatives from dozens of formerly isolated alien civilizations converged for the first Galactic Council meeting. Earth, once considered a primitive backwater, had become the nexus of a new age of interspecies cooperation. Nexus approached them, its liquid metal form now incorporating elements of human and Kraxan design. The Council is ready to begin. They're eager to hear Earth's proposal for the Progressive Evolution Initiative. Sarah nodded, gathering her thoughts. The quantum field event had changed everything, not just for Earth, but for all spacefaring civilizations. The key, rather than being a tool for controlling evolution, had revealed itself to be something far more profound, a catalyst for cooperative consciousness. You know, Torres said as they walked to the council chamber, the Kraxans still don't fully understand how we did it. Their tactical computers are still trying to analyze our strategy. Sarah smiled. That's because they're looking for complexity when the answer was simple. We didn't try to be perfect. We just tried to be human. The council chamber was a marvel of joint engineering. Quantum field generators maintained a low-level consciousness mesh, allowing for perfect translation and shared understanding between species. The walls shifted between solid and transparent states, revealing the star-filled void beyond. Former Kraxan Supreme Commander Vexthor, now bearing the organic modifications that marked all participants in the quantum merger, addressed the assembly. 3 cycles ago, we came to Earth prepared to enforce galactic order. Instead, we found ourselves transformed by chaos. Beautiful, productive chaos. The assembled representatives, representing species from across the galaxy, murmured in agreement. Many had already begun incorporating elements of human unpredictability into their own civilizations, leading to unprecedented breakthroughs in science, art, and consciousness evolution. Sarah stepped forward to present Earth's proposal. The key showed us that evolution isn't about becoming perfect, it's about remaining adaptable. Humanity's gift isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to embrace imperfection as a path to growth. The quantum field hummed as she activated the main display, showing the results of the first controlled consciousness mergers. Species that had been stagnant for millennia were developing in new, unexpected ways. Rigid hierarchies were dissolving in favor of dynamic, adaptive systems. We propose, Sarah continued, that we formalize what we've learned, not through rules or controls, but through a framework for collaborative evolution. Every species brings its own strengths. Together, we can become something greater than any of us could achieve alone. The chamber erupted in a cascade of consciousness signatures, the equivalent of enthusiastic applause in multiple species forms of expression. Even the former Kraxan representatives, once the staunchest advocates of controlled evolution, radiated approval through the quantum mesh. There will be challenges, Nexus observed, its form rippling with combined emotions. Not every species will choose to participate. Some may see our cooperative evolution as a threat. Good, Torres replied with a grin. That means we're doing something right. Evolution needs resistance to work properly. Sarah watched as the council began discussing implementation details, her mind drifting to the billions of humans back on Earth. They were changing too, incorporating elements of alien consciousness while maintaining their fundamental humanity. It wasn't always smooth or easy, but that was the point. Evolution worked best when it was messy. You know, she said to Taurus and Nexus, we still don't know exactly what the key is or who created it. It could have been waiting on Earth for millions of years, drawing humanity toward this moment. Does it matter? Taurus asked. What matters is what we choose to do with the opportunity. Sarah touched the quantum field interface, feeling the combined consciousness of thousands of species flowing through the network. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, not as conquerors or subjects, but as catalysts for change. No, she agreed. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we remembered something that the older species have forgotten. The most beautiful things in the universe aren't built through perfect order, but through the collaborative chaos of different minds working together. As the council session continued, a new signal was detected at the edge of the solar system. Another species, drawn by the quantum field's invitation, was approaching. They would bring their own strengths, their own perspectives, their own chaos to add to the growing symphony of consciousness, and humanity would be there to welcome them, ready to learn, ready to teach, ready to evolve together. Because that was what humans did best. They adapted, they improvised, and they turned the unknown into opportunity. The first contact protocol had worked, not because it was perfect, but because it was perfectly human, and in a universe of infinite possibilities that turned out to be exactly what was needed. The end.